If you could choose, would you give your team state-of-the-art training facilities to nurture the next generation of talent, or a boatload of cash? So today we are putting it to the test. But rather than giving one team the perfect facilities and the other team £1 billion, I'm giving the entire National League North perfect facilities and the entire National League South all the money. Surely at least one of these teams will be sensible enough to actually make it all the way to the Premier League. In Season 1, Scarborough have made the most of their top facilities by winning the league ahead of Chester, who beat Spennymoor in the playoff final. Now, one way we'll be able to see how good these teams are doing is by looking at the quality of their youth academy players. All players have a current and potential ability out of 200. The current ability obviously shows how good they are right now, whilst the potential ability represents how good they could get. So Scarborough have developed a player with 151 potential ability, which is good enough to be a top Premier League player. The highest potential player developed in the league is Javon Duncan at Kings Lynn. His potential is 153, so again should be a top Premier League player in the future, if he trains well and gets enough game time at a high enough level. But right now he's so good at 16 years old, he's already made 2 international appearances for St Kitts and Nevis. So we are going to keep an eye out on this guy. In the south, Yeovil have spent their way to the title, whilst Eastbourne Borough have beaten Worthing in the playoff final. But it is Weymouth who are spending the most money on wages, at £1.9 million per season. But actually, it's not a huge amount more than the teams in the National League North. In fact, Weymouth are only spending big on one player, a cool £27,500 per week on Jordan Much. I'm sure his family think otherwise, but I really do not think he is worth anywhere near that amount of money. There's only one other big earner in the league right now, and that is Sam Magri at Truro City. He's on £15,500 a week. But in Season 2, we can see that there are more teams spending more money on more players. So slowly, we're starting to see the wages get inflated. Our 4 promoted teams from last season have done okay in the National League. Interestingly, Scarborough and Chester, who have had their facilities upgraded, have done better than both Yeovil and Eastbourne Borough, who I was expecting to buy up the league. They are both the biggest spenders in the division, but they're actually being fairly sensible. Yeovil, for example, aren't spending £27,000 a week on a player, their top earner is only on £4,200 a week. And although Eastbourne are spending £19,000 a week on Scott Hogan, he is by far the best player in their team. Scarborough can't buy the league, so instead they're relying on 5 of their youth players. Jock Crichton is their first choice keeper after coming through the academy. It turns out actually last season he was already called up to the first team when we looked at their youth team to see how good their players were. Speaking of which, it was Matthew Stewart who we saw last season, and he's been sold to Morecambe for £1,600. If he can realise his potential, that is an absolute steal for Morecambe. But they've already got a replacement in 16-year-old Jordan Adams, who came through this season's youth intake and has even better potential ability. Chester haven't been quite so lucky with their youth players, but they do have 2 players with 151 potential ability from this season. So again, they could either develop them and get them up the leagues, or sell them for big money. Those 4 teams are going to be joined by Scunthorpe and Hereford next season from the Vanarama National League North, as well as Boreham Wood and Bath City from the National League South. However, Boreham Wood were relegated from the National League last season, so despite all of these teams having so much money, they still can't beat Boreham Wood. It's not really a very good look for them, is it? The league's top earner is Kyle McAllister at Tonbridge Angels on £37,500 a week. That is one lucky man. But if we go into the National League North, this is incredibly remarkable. Spennymoor have produced Brenton Fielding. And I promise you I have not changed this, but his potential ability is 200 out of 200. For context, at their peaks, Messi and Ronaldo had a current ability of about 198. So this guy could literally go on to be the best player of all time. This is a list of the best players sorted by current ability in England, and Brenton obviously has the highest potential ability. But Chorley have a Mexican kid with 192 potential ability, and Blythe had another Australian guy with 180 potential ability. Obviously, these teams have got 20 out of 20 for youth recruitment, which means they can get the best youngsters from around the world. But the club's reputation has still got a big part to play in this. Imagine you're a young player and you've got the choice between Spennymoor and Real Madrid. Who would you go to? To be fair, when you put it like that, actually, it's pretty obvious. I'd choose Spennymoor as well. Heading into Season 3, Scunthorpe United have taken the lead, as they've been promoted from the National League, making them the first of our teams to make it to the Football League. They actually got there after beating Altrincham on penalties in the playoff final. Moneybags Yeovil made it to the playoffs but lost in the semi-finals, and Eastbourne Borough finished rock bottom of the table, despite having a bank balance of £549 million, which means they've spent £450 million in the first 2 seasons, but a big chunk of that will have been taken as tax at the very start of the game, so really they've only spent about £300 million. What the hell has that gone on? Although it does look like the game was maybe auto-balancing things a little bit, because you can see this big spike here of about £240 million, well that goes down as other, the amount of miscellaneous expenses such as advertising, supplies and general expenses. Tax, it seems, was about £15 million a month for about 12 months in a row, so that's another £130 million they've had to spend. Back to the National League though, and there's no surprise that Bath, Yeovil and Eastbourne had the largest wage budgets as they're the billionaire clubs. But interestingly, it's Scunthorpe United in 4th place. Their top earner is Chris Moore, because they're paying all of his wages whilst he's in on loan from Leeds United. But Scarborough, on the other hand, have got 5 academy players in their first team, and 4 of them are first team regulars. So it's really impressive they finished in 8th place this past season, just missing out on the playoffs. In the National League North, Boston finished 4 points shy of breaking the league's points record as they get promoted alongside Tamworth, who won the playoffs. But they're being absolutely fleeced. They sold 4 players for £15,000 this past season, and worst of all, Kai Evans was sold to Sunderland for £1,200, and his potential ability is 180 out of 200. For context, if he does reach his potential, it would make him as good as the 11th best player in the database, Bernardo Silva. And in the National League South, Torquay and Southend have just been promoted. But again, Southend are a relegated side. We haven't given them any money. So this is really embarrassing for the teams who have failed to buy their way out of the league. Especially when Tonbridge Angels are spending £6 million a season to try and get out the league, and they only finished in 10th. But the league's top earner is Alfie McCalmont at Hampton and Richmond on £43,000 a week. So now we've seen one team get to the Football League, I want to fast forward things a little bit and go to season 10, where sadly, and maybe obviously, none of them have made it to the promised land of the Premier League. And none of them are currently in the Championship, which is maybe a little bit concerning. But Scunthorpe are the only team we've made changes to that are in League One, which feels like a big red flag. What are the other clubs doing? Especially the ones we gave £1 billion to. The Iron have had 3 promotions in a row and have settled in League One since reaching the division. 4 of the 10 best players at the club, sorted by current ability, are all from Scunthorpe's academy, which is pretty cool. But the rate of good players being developed might start to slow down, as their facilities are getting downgraded over time. But they do have £7 million in the bank account they could use to try and upgrade them. Most of this money came from their biggest ever sale, up to £7 million for David Ozo, who's actually a real player, not one of their academy prospects. Fortunately, Scarborough Athletic will be joining them next season in League One, as they get automatic promotion from League Two, whereas Spennymoor lost in the playoff semi-finals. Worthing just missed out on the playoffs, finishing in 8th place, and Chester are also in the league but down in 18th. Worthing have only picked up momentum in the last 5 seasons, as they finally start to spend their £1 billion, with 4 players earning over £13,000 a week, as only Burton are spending more money on their wages per season. But it did work for Burton, as they have just been promoted. The National League is a real mix of teams though, including FC United and Farsley Celtic, who have got promoted into this league after starting a league below the National League North and South. So they are really embarrassing the teams that we've made some big improvements to. Now, remember Javon Duncan? He was that first really good player with high potential that we found in Season 1. Well, he's now playing at Barnet in the National League South. Interestingly, he moved from Kings Lynn to Brentford on a free, but despite training at one of the best teams in the country, he just couldn't improve. His current ability is 70, and he will never ever hit his potential ability. I have no idea what went wrong, but I feel pretty bad for him. And then of course we have Brenton Fielding, who was the player with 200 potential ability, And whilst he does look absolutely insane, his current ability is only 162 out of 200, and at 24 years old, I don't think he's going to actually reach and fulfill that potential. And he's not actually that good either. Look at his goal scoring record since he's been at Aston Villa. 12 goals this past season, it's not great. And it might be the case that we won't see many more like him. Of the best young players based in England under the age of 18, only 3 of the top 15 sorted by potential ability are from clubs that started in the National League North and South. So as we head to season 25, there's still not a single one of our non-league clubs currently in the Premier League. But Man City have fallen to 15th place, so there is a silver lining. Frustratingly, we also don't have a team in the Championship. But finally, we do have multiple teams in League One, as Scunthorpe and Chorley both finish on 69 points, while Spennymoor are in 14th and Worthing and Chester have just been relegated. I'm surprised Worthing are the only team from the National League South to be in League One, especially as they have almost £600 million still to spend. They've also got 7 players on over £10,000 per week, but other than Jason Phillips, their current abilities just aren't good enough for this division. They're also only the 5th largest spenders in the league, with teams such as Birmingham and Hull having recently been relegated from the Championship still holding on to some players on Championship wages. I've also been through all the teams that started off life in the National League North, and only Chorley are playing a first team regular from their youth academy. This is Delroy Stanley, who looks to be a decent inside forward and scored 7 goals this past season for them. The issue is the facilities are slowly being downgraded as they've had no work done to them for 25 years now, so they just aren't producing top players at the same rate they once were. The best player under 18 from one of our teams is Kezi Gomez at Rushall Olympic, but his potential ability is only 139, which is a low quality Premier League player, so it's not really looking very good right now. Scunthorpe are still the most successful side that we've seen, as they've spent 1 season in the Championship, where of course they were immediately relegated. So I don't know about you guys, but I was expecting a lot more from the teams that we've made changes to. Just like you guys can expect a lot more high quality Football Manager content on this channel. So make sure you like the video and subscribe, please. League 2 features more of our non-league teams, but more of them are from the north than the south, which does suggest that facilities are way more effective than a bunch of cash. But some clubs are running out of cash. Yeovil, for example, only have £174 million left, and they have nothing to show for it. I'm lying to you. They've actually got the 2043 Bristol Street Motors Trophy. Definitely worth the £850 million or so they've spent. However, in season 50, we've had some rapid growth from Spennymoor Town, as they're now 12th in the Premier League. It's their 3rd time in the division, but the first time they haven't gone straight back down. And they've managed to keep investing in their facilities enough to make sure they're still at a good level. They have 1 player in the first team that they've developed from their academy, the wonderfully named David Davis. His potential ability is 165, which would make him a leading Premier League player. But sadly, their under-18 squad isn't particularly good, so they are relying on buying players from other clubs to keep themselves in the Premier League. In terms of trophies, they haven't really won much, but hopefully they'll pick up an FA Cup or 2 along the way and stay established in the Premier League. Now, incredibly, Mansfield and Leyton Orient will be in the Premier League next season, despite us doing nothing to those clubs. And Spennymoor are even more impressive, given none of our non-league clubs are in the Championship. But I would like to point out that my club, Lincoln City, in 15th place, have had 1 season in the Premier League. This is the whole reason I do experiments just like this. It gives me an excuse to try and see if Lincoln City can ever get to the Premier League. Tamworth, Yeovil, Welling and Darlington are all in League 1, whilst Worthing, Scunthorpe, Farnborough, Chelmsford, Chorley and Taunton are all in League 2. So of the 48 teams we made changes to, only 11 are in the Football League in 50 years. What's gone wrong? I mean, look at League 2. Dulwich Hamlet in 11th and Macclesfield in 12th both start in the 7th division of football. So they've had to go into the National League North and South, compete with the teams that have got £1 billion and the perfect facilities, beat them all and get to the Football League and stay there. They are the real heroes of this video. So I've left this running overnight, we're now in season 74, and Spennymoor are still in the Premier League, having become an established side in the division over the last 20 seasons. So I think we can say the biggest success from this video is Spennymoor Town. They've also managed to win one FA Cup, which actually was last season, and they went through Sheffield Wednesday, Blackburn, Chelsea and Liverpool to lift the trophy. So obviously that means they're in the Europa League this season. They came 5th in the new league phase format, meaning they skipped straight through to the round of 16. Here they beat Juventus 4-0 on aggregate, which puts them in the quarterfinals, where they beat Everton 3-1 on aggregate. But even better than that, they reached the final by beating Lazio in the semis, and then won the entire tournament by beating Valencia 2-0 in the final. Sadly, the goal scorer Alfonso Cuesta was from the Real Madrid academy, not the Spennymoor academy. So next season they'll be in the Champions League as West Ham lift the Premier League title for the 17th time in the last 25 seasons. Spennymoor have actually been in the Champions League twice before, but never got past the round of 16. This season was only their 3rd time in the Europa League, so an incredible achievement to win it, and they also had one attempt in the Europa Conference League, but lost in a qualifying round. Welling will be joining Spennymoor in the Premier League next season, while Scarborough Athletic are the only other former non-league side at this level. Welling have had 2 seasons in the Premier League in the past 20 years, and have used all of their money from the start of the video to invest in some top training and youth facilities. On the other hand, this was Scarborough's first season in the Championship in the last 20 years, who haven't been able to invest in their facilities, which have massively declined since the start of the video. But I'm surprised by the lack of non-league sides that we made changes to in League 1. Only Chorley feature, and they've just been relegated. And in League 2, we've only got Southport and St Albans that we made changes to, meaning all the other teams are still in non-league football. And like last time, Dulwich Hamlet and Macclesfield, who start lower than the 6th division, have done better than the teams that we helped out, as they've both been promoted this past season. For what it's worth, the National League does feature a lot of the sides that we gave big money to. Also, if you could all ignore Lincoln City in 6th place, that would be great. Please remember them as the one-time Premier League giants. So teams like Boston United and Rushden Olympic are all still in the National League North. And after having such a good start, Yeovil are still exactly where they started in the National League South. So the moral of the story is, don't waste £1 billion on every single side in the National League South. Instead, invest all of your money into a club's facilities, and you might end up with a Spennymoor Town who win the Europa League 74 years in the future. Or you could hire me as your manager, and I'll go and win you the Pentagon Challenge, the top continental competition in every single continent. If you somehow haven't seen that yet, the entire playlist is linked on the screen right now for you to go and watch and enjoy.